world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren and
and this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Maren, and I'm here with Stephanie. And she and I, we've been talking a lot about the hustle culture and the fact that more people are becoming aware that it's not healthy. I've been seeing more articles about it, and the damage that it's done to us as individuals, to us as a culture, to our teams, to our planet, like all the stuff. And I'm really glad that awareness is being brought to it. And I think the thing that I'm noticing is that the people are trying to fix it. And we've talked before about fixing, forcing, and what's the third F?
Figuring out.
Figuring out, right. And I just don't think that it's something, when we look at it from a perspective of fixing it, we will create more problems than the hustle culture is actually created in and of itself.
Can you say more for those who might not be familiar what the hustle culture meme really is? Like, just to kind of explain that, like, what is the hustle culture and why are we so, adamant that we have to change it?
So many years ago, there was this kind of a relaxed way of being in families, and work took a certain amount of time, and then you came home and you were with your family and everybody had dinner together. And there's a lot of people who want to go back to this idyllic kind of way of life, which was not idyllic.
Which is funny because that's kind of the pandemic gave us permission to have dinners together again.
It did.
And to slow down and to stop.
Right.
And for some people really liked it, and others it was really, really hell. It was hard.
It was hard, right. And like all of the eras that we've gone through as human beings have had both their benefits and their challenges. So from that, work became more prioritized, and goals, outer goals of, keeping up with the Joneses of, well, so-and-so has it, why shouldn't I? So I'm going to work a little bit harder. And the work ethic changed to be there. Even the term work ethic, that there is such a thing. The work ethic is that you'll put in a certain amount of time, and you really see it in certain professions. And then it became in all professions. So it may have started out in like being a lawyer, you knew you needed, or being a doctor, you knew you needed to put in, 80 hours a week, which is way more than the average work week was 40 hours. And then it became 50 hours, and then it became 60 hours, and then it became that's the norm. If you want to get anywhere, you do more, you do it faster, you put in more effort, you like this push, onto the next, onto the next, onto the next, do it faster, do it better, do it, with less effort, with less, and supposedly, and this is true, I guess, for AI too, supposedly it was going to allow us at some point to have more.
And so we could do less.
So that we could do less.
Mm-hmm. But it's not happening, is it?
It's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see most people doing is they get more in debt, because we're expected to have more outer proof that we're successful. So we buy a bigger house and a bigger car, and we buy more stuff, and we go on more vacations, which means we're now more in debt. So we have to do more work, and we have to figure out how to, it's a never ending consumption binge.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think
exhausting. And we're exhausted, and we're lonely.
Exhausted.
And we're disconnected from nature and ourselves and each other. Like it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not. So consequently, people are quitting,
Pulling back,
pulling back.
saying enough,
Hmm.
which I'm so glad, right? That never ending consumption binge. That's how I think of the hustle culture, is like it's never ending, and there needs to be, the brakes do need to be put on. And it's like, stop.
Hmm. Hmm. But what sometimes happens, like anything, is like the pendulum swings from one side over to the other side, which also isn't helpful either. So, we're finding it hard to get people to show up for work, where businesses are closing because they don't have the staff or the team. We can't get
Mm,
products because all of a sudden, it's gone to the other extreme too. So the people that are working are now having to double their productivity and their time and their energy into what they're doing to make
right.
up for the lack. So, what would be the balance? What would be the integration of that? Like, there's some great insights of the hustle of like going, "Well, what is of value? What is of priority? And how do we restructure in a new way that transcends and includes where we are?" And what I mean by that, it's like someone said to me the other day, "Oh, Stephanie, you're never going to retire." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, why would I retire from something that I love? That's something that nourishes me. And it's not about the money, but it nourishes me body, mind, and soul." Like I I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm scared to not work because then I'll become idle. And there's enough idleness in the world in the way of just kind of sitting. I don't want to binge on Netflix. I don't want to I want to grow. I want to evolve my mind, my body, and my spirit. And in order for me to do that, I want to be challenged, and I don't want to be challenged through pain and suffering. I want to be challenged by something that I love and I find beautiful, which is what I love about I don't call it a job. It's a vocation. It's a calling. I love it. So
I think,
why retire from it, right? But I think there's
yeah.
there's a lot of people that don't have that. There's a lot of people that have a job or a work, like a means to the ends. And I think that's where the pain and the suffering happens of like, I don't want to keep shoveling that shit anymore. I want to
Mm.
find something that sustains me and doesn't just give me that surface. We call it like flatland, that surface. We want to go deeper. We want to go more sustenance, more, juiciness of life. Like, what is that? And it's not out there because we've been trying to do that. We've been trying to do more and have more, and it's not working.
And I think that is what you're talking about, is the key. So there are two things. The first is, instead of a reaction, which is what I'm seeing to the hustle culture, there is a reaction. And it's important, it's good, it's not, it's like, once there is the reaction, though, starting the quest.
Hmm.
Instead of just pulling the plug, quiet quitting, or not showing up, or showing up and not doing your work, or like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
done,
Like
right?
just putting in the time to get to your retirement,
Right. So
which is quiet
what,
quitting, by the way.
right. Quiet quitting is you're actually showing up to work, but you're not showing up because you don't want to be there.
Mhm.
um, so asking the questions. What are the questions? What's the quest? Why are you there? What happens when you're there that makes you not want to be there? Where else might you want to be? Where are your passions? There are so many questions that we could ask instead of just shutting down. And that's what I see
Mm,
in quiet quitting, or like you said, binging on Netflix, or that's a shutdown of our system. And it is a reaction.
yeah.
It's not an action. And oftentimes we think we're doing an action. Say, like, I've decided that I'm going to show my boss and I'm going to show up to work, but I'm not going to do anything. And I think I'm taking an action, a positive action for myself. That's actually a reaction, and I'm not taking time for myself. I'm
Mhm.
not giving myself the what I'm really craving, which is the second piece. I said there were two. The second piece, and you were talking about it, is There has to be meaning.
Yeah.
So you and I both are doing something that we love, and we're blessed to have found that. And we've done a lot of work in our lifetime to get to that place where it's like, I
So
love
so
it.
I'm just gonna put you pause in there when we say we've done a lot of work in our lives to get there. We're not talking about the outer work.
Mm.
And what I mean is like, yes, I've had a few jobs from hell, which really helps to say, I don't want to do that anymore. Just like we could have relationships from hell and we go, I don't want to do that anymore, or whatever it is, right? But that also requires to go inside yourself and do inner work. And we've talked about this quite a few times. It's like, well, what is inner work? What does that even mean, Maren? Like when we say to do, we both have done a lot of work around finding meaning and purpose in our lives.
And that is going back to the questions. So
Yeah.
those are starting to get into the, okay, so how do I find the meaning?
Hmm.
What do you mean, Maren? When you say ask questions, what do you mean? Because really, all I want to do is curl up on the couch and watch Netflix or go to the freezer and grab my thing of ice cream and like disappear into a book for the next 4 hours.
So even the question that you're saying, like, when we say doing that work is instead of maybe asking how, we ask why.
Mm.
Why are you in this relationship? Why are you, doing this the way you're doing it? Why are you working in this job or in this way? And if you get clear about the why, and I hope the why is more than just, to put food on the table and money in your savings for your retirement. I hope that there's a deeper meaning because that's what we're talking about. If it's just a surface of the exterior part of like food, water, shelter, and retirement fund, it's hard to sustain.
And that's why there's an issue with the hustle culture. There's
Mhm.
an issue with where we are as a society, and there's an issue with where we each of us is individually.
Yeah.
And the the quote unquote fix for the hustle culture is not the reaction. It's not just shut off your phone. That may be a temporary fix when you shut off your phone or don't go to work or say, I'm only available from 9 to 5. Those are great things.
Those are boundaries for
They're
a
not
life that
sustainable.
doesn't have meaning.
Right. They're not sustainable and they won't actually change the hustle culture.
Right.
There's a backlash to that. So what will change it, and you were talking about it, was like asking the why questions. And maybe the why question is like, yes, there's that surface answer, that immediate, well, because I've got debt, I've got school debt, I've got a family to feed, I've got this, I've got that. Great. I love that. And
Mhm.
then is there another way? Because there's always another way. And we get so ingrained in what we think is the only way. I have to do this. And so
Yeah, that becomes
maybe
very rigid
it becomes
and
very rigid.
and doesn't really open up possibilities or curiosity or wonder,
Right.
which gives you life force, by the way. Being curious and staying
Mm.
in that place of being wonder is that childlike, not childish, but childlike wonder actually opens up possibilities.
It does. And this is where turning off your phone and saying, I'm only available from 9 to 5, or I'm not coming in, or whatever it is that's your reaction, taking that space that you've just created and asking some questions with it instead of going and hiding under a blanket. I know I trust me, I've done it. I want to be there. And if you can just take a moment of that and say, you know what, I'm going to invest in my future with this hour
Mhm.
that I've created. I've made some space. I've turned off my phone. I've said I'm not coming in, whatever it is. And I'm going to take this hour and invest in my future and ask some hard questions. They're hard.
Yeah, to look inside is not easy, but it's
No.
totally worth it. I had this great story that I had heard the other day about a man who had hired a good friend of his, and she was their bookkeeper kind of thing in the business, and she embezzled like $60,000 from him.
Mm.
And, his friend said, "Well, you're gonna, like, fire her, right? And you're gonna press charges." He's like, "No." And I know in our culture, we're like, "Well, then that's stupid. Like, he's just setting himself up for,"
Right.
but he did something really profound. Instead of reacting, he became responsive. And he first took it to his own heart and said, "Okay, this is interesting. What is the gift that I'm being called to live here? Like, there's a gift in this." And if I could transcend reactionary, like, that part of it,
And
he had like
also, just a minute,
mm,
it's also that it's not something being done to him on the outer world, from the outer
right.
world.
That's right.
The responsiveness comes from taking responsibility that gives us the ability to respond.
Exactly. So he looked inside and said, "Well, what was in me that allowed this to happen?" And not from a place of shame or beating himself up. He was stayed curious. And in wonder, he's like, I wonder what in me allowed this to happen, where I went off track, or when I missed the red flags, or didn't check my regular statements or something like that. There's something that's calling me to be a better leader. And it's not from a reactionary place, but from a responsive place. And then he even took it to another level and he said, "I wonder what's going on with her that made her do that." So all of a sudden he put compassion in. And so he went to her and said, "Hey, look, I discovered that this was going on, and are you okay?"
So not blaming her,
Not blaming her.
asking,
He
staying
literally
curious.
staying curious and staying in his heart with that. He said, "Are you okay?" And whatever had happened or what have she came, clean and said that, yeah, that she had been doing this and whatever happened. And they set up a payment plan so that she would pay him back. And they both learned something about truth and, you know, being transparent and compassionate and also looking within to say,
And
well,
the
how could,
ability,
right.
responsibility, the
What could we
ability.
do differently so that this doesn't happen again? What is the lesson here? But yeah, we tend to get into that, I'm right, you're wrong, you're good, I'm bad, ethical, unethical. We get into those binary polar aspects, which then we just react and say, "You're done, I'm out of here." Or we quit. We're like, why bother? And this is detrimental to our growth.
It is.
And not just to your own personal growth, but the growth of all those around you.
And I think one of the things we don't realize is that without the inner inquiry, when we quit, we also quit on ourselves.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that that's a blanket, like everybody, when you quit on yourself. I say without the inner inquiry, without knowing why you're quitting.
Because the thing that just came up to me when you said that, Maren, was I think of someone who's being abused in a relationship. And finally they have enough self-esteem, self-worth, self-love to say, "I'm out of here." And that's, absolutely. But if we don't take that inner inquiry inside, not to say that, hey, you attracted it. I'm not saying that, but to be able to say, what was it in me that allowed that to happen?
Mm.
What did I learn from that? And what do I need? How do I need to become better? Because we think that our personality, or we think that our sex or our race or our culture is who we are, and we're not that. We are literally, what does Gene Houston say about that? That we are,
Biodegradable bodysuits,
yeah, organic
something,
material. Like,
right?
it's like, that we are souls basically taking a very brief moment in time to have a biodegradable organic bodysuit for a moment, but we have an opportunity to grow and evolve and not create huge tidal waves to hurt ourselves or each other. We can actually lift up.
And I do want to just add that oftentimes we need to get out of the situation. And you brought up, like a
Yeah.
physical abuse, and it's very easy to see in that. Like somebody has to get out of that situation first
Hmm.
before they can recover enough to do the inner inquiry, to ask those
Yeah.
questions, right? So there is a a self-preservation. There is a, if you need to get out of a situation, whether it's a work situation or a hustle situation or whatever, take the time, get out of it. And
And then take the time and go
then take the time
inward,
and go inward, right?
not from a place of shame or blame or
No,
self-pity, but a
of like,
place
I want
of,
to grow
yeah,
forward,
yeah.
you know?
And that
When,
there's always a higher story for what happens. Like, you know, if something doesn't, what does Rumi say? You know, be grateful for that which does not come. You know, sometimes it's saving you from
mm,
something that, you know, and be open to what is meant to happen. And I, nothing makes me crazier than someone said, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It's like, no, you need to do the inner work with that, because I, you know, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Sometimes, sometimes we do need to do that inner work so that we can be in the right time, in the right space, and we have the right, we have the best qualities within ourselves to really receive it. But we need help. We're not meant to do this on our own and isolation all by ourselves. You know, we're meant to actually get triggered by each other or by the world outside of ourselves so that we'll go in and find a higher, a higher possibility. It's really easy to just say, "That's it," you know, block somebody on Facebook or delete them off your friends list, or, you know, quit the job or get the divorce or move cities. It actually is pretty easy to do that. It really is. But you just take the same stuff with you.
right,
You're just gonna now attract it in another different way, you know? And
right,
often it isn't gonna be as easy the next time. It sometimes is harder
yeah.
unless we're doing that internal work to be able to bring that which is within to come up and to grow and change and be a different attractor.
And I think the vision that both you and I have for everybody on the planet is for our outward work to be our passion, so that we
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and we're excited. And like you said, why would you retire from doing something that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
you'd say to any parent, "Oh, so when do you get to retire when the kids go?" Right? It's like you never retire from something that you love.
Right.
And
It's like
what would,
retiring from your
right,
love relationship. No,
right,
I just,
no.
like, I am in, I saw a movie recently. It was on Netflix, so it's a popular movie. It was something like Trip to Paradise or something. It's got hmm, I can't think of the name of the people in it. Anyway, um the young man in it says, there's a young woman that goes off to Bali, and she falls in love with this guy in Bali. And the guy that she falls in love with, she's talking to him, and he's a seaweed farmer. And she says, "That's your work?" And he looks at her and he says, "No, this is my partnership with the goddess of the sea and
Mm,
with spirit." And I thought, what if all of us thought of our work, our outward job that we do, as a partnership with whatever, like, for me, maybe my partner would be the spirit of speakers or what, like, what if it was all of us thought of it like that,
mhm.
instead of it's something I have to do to pay the bills.
Yeah, and sometimes just having that shift, that internal shift,
Mm,
changes how you show up and changes what happens in your current job or your current relationship or your current situation. It literally it's a game changer.
yeah.
It's like you can look at your partner, whatever that is, you know, in your life as being a pain in the ass who's trying to demand things from you. Or you can look at it and say, I get to do this. How can I fall in love with this, whatever this is, right? This job, this person, this, you know, paying the bill, this whatever. Like if we can cultivate more love and meaning and gratitude, it will change it. But that is a practice.
One of the questions that you could start asking is, if I were able to do anything and partner with the goddess of, or the god of, what would I do? What would I do? What could that look like? And start playing and dreaming with that.
Hmm.
Because from where you are right now, you can't see the possibility. And when you plant that seed with spirit, with the universe, it very well may come and find you, because it starts a thread of possibility. And until you start that thread of possibility, it's just not out there yet.
That's right. So letting go. So sometimes you do need to let go
Yep.
of a job or a relationship or, you know, something that has been a struggle for you.
Or at least make space within that.
Right.
Like,
And
okay,
so
I'm not doing X, or I'm not doing Y, or
you were
right.
sharing a great antidote of like when a tree falls.
Mm.
Like, it's let go. Its roots, it's time for it to leave its anchor.
So what Stephanie's referring to
Mm.
is, before we got on today, I said, when a tree dies and it falls, or, it doesn't just disappear. It's not poof, it's gone. It decays in the forest, and it takes a while. And in that decaying process, it provides food and shelter and homes and like all kinds of stuff that's important.
So even in the decaying, it has meaning and purpose.
It does.
And so I think that's something to remember, like when people are saying, well, I left this job or I left that relationship or I moved towns
Oh,
or
and we just
cities.
turn it off, right?
Right. It's like,
As if
no,
the
there's a
tree just,
process. That
right.
tree had a process and it was still in service.
Mm.
And if we can look within to remember that as we're looking within and asking ourselves questions or finding that place of looking at why did I attract this, or for what purpose did I need to go through that? And when we can start to cultivate the gifts, we're actually offering it back as service to all those
Mm.
around us. And it takes time.
It does take time. And
It doesn't poof just disappear.
it doesn't poof. And so when we leave a job, like you said, when we leave a job or when we leave a relationship, and we've made that declaration, honoring that decaying process of, like, it still needs something, and it's still a part of you,
That's right.
and it's feeding other things, and there's so much that it does serve in us. And oftentimes we're like, nope, I'm not thinking about that, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to, like, I want
Exactly.
nothing to do with it. Nope.
And how
Done,
many
done,
times
done, done.
I'm thinking of people who have lost loved ones who say, "What? You're still grieving?" And it might be 1 year, it might be 10 years. And it's like, we're all different trees, Sometimes we're just a little tree. Sometimes we are a hardwood and a tall tree and it takes a long time.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you're having a hard time going through a process, it's okay that you are actually decomposing and you are like to be able to look within, because there's going to be lots and lots of treasure and lots of opportunities for service and gifts, both to yourself and to those around you as you go through the process.
I love that. Give ourselves permission.
Yeah. Be
So,
kind.
yeah. And this is how we actually evolve the hustle culture. Is doing, showing up to the inner work, asking the questions, and being willing to sit with and be with, instead of instantly turning it off. Like, turn it off, make your space, and do some of the inner work.
Mhm.
It is well worth the investment, because, like Stephanie said, otherwise the next job you get will be basically a version of the same thing. You're going to go through the same exact stuff,
Yeah.
or maybe a little harder.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, because hopefully you've taken the time and you've asked some great questions, or at least a question. Start there. Well, thanks for joining us today. As I always tell you, everything will be linked in the show notes. So the movie that I mentioned earlier and anything else that we've talked about, I'll have a link in the show notes, so you can find that there. You can also find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And don't forget that we do have a free download on our website. So if you're interested in finding out when our podcasts come out and getting first access to our podcasts and getting our little freebie, go ahead to our website, thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com, and sign up for our email list. And we will see you all next week on the Soulful Leader Podcast.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.